Hi, everyone. This is Practical Mystics, where we explore spiritual and higher dimensional practices and beliefs and offer practical steps that you can integrate into your life. I am Lisa Heidle, and I'm your host, and I'm here with my very special guest, Leona Khong. And we're going to be talking about shadow work today. Welcome, Leona.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited to have you on Practical Mystics and talking about shadow work because I think there's a lot of confusion about it. I think,
Yeah,
and people don't realize we're always doing it if we are on a healing journey. We're always doing
right.
shadow work, but I don't think people really understand what it means and how to do it. And you're going to guide us through that today.
Oh, I will do my best. Thanks for that lovely intro.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio and then you can add to it. And then we're going to get started.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Leona Khong is an energy healer, intuitive channeler, and yoga teacher. She believes that if we were all to heal ourselves and our wounds developed from childhood or past lives, these healing effects would ripple out to the collective consciousness and humans would naturally cease to harm one another and Mother Earth. Her work has a focus on connecting individuals with their spirit guides, as well as on shadow work and helping people alchemize their fears and limiting beliefs into paradoxically their greatest gifts. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Leona. It's a beautiful bio. I think it really shows your desire to be of service to the collective.
Thank you. Yeah, that's always been the main goal, I suppose, behind all my work. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead tell our listeners and watchers a little bit about your journey on becoming a coach of someone working with energies and shadow work.
Yeah, totally. So, how I even came about to be a healer in the first place, I was born and raised in Malaysia. Then I came to Vancouver for university. And then during my university years, I was really passionate about climate action and climate work. And I thought my dream was to like work in this field because obviously it would be so heartbreaking seeing like pollution and all these things and climate change. And then during the pandemic, when I had a little, I guess, a little bit of an existential crisis, like a lot of people, and I had to go inward. And I also, oh, but before that, I had my little spiritual awakening like 2 or 3 years before the pandemic. So that's when my healing journey began. And then as I was healing myself during COVID, when that started, it was also through like a lot of indigenous teachings and the influence from that where I started to experientially realize that we harm one another and we harm the earth because we're walking around with these like big wounds inside us or any traces of self-loathing that we've picked up from like childhood or from like past lives. So yeah, through my healing journey, I realized that I really wanted to work one-on-one with people and help them with their healing journey because it's kind of like going deeper to address the root cause, if that makes sense. And then as we heal ourselves, and like you said in my bio, that would just ripple out eventually and naturally to the rest of the human collective. Yeah. And that's how I got into healing work and really dedicated myself to it.
Thank you. I think that's so lovely when someone is like, they go through the experience, they've had the healing, and they're still doing their own work.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a journey. It's not a
Oh, it
destination,
never
right?
ends.
We're doing this forever, right? And then they want to give back to others. And, I think so often we think we have to do it on this huge scale but I'm a micro thinker and micro connector, so I believe that we can heal one on one, right? One person shows up with a healed ego, if you will, a healed aspect of themselves, and then they connect with the person who and then gives them the help to heal theirs. And I think that's so lovely. Yeah.
That's so true. Like I've seen so many instances of people who just started their own healing journey and at first it's really lonely, like, their family doesn't get them and but then as they progress on their healing journey, what happens is they start to react or respond differently to, for example, like old arguments with family members that have been around for decades. And then through that, it's like they're a living example, right? So their family members kind of start to question their own ways as well and look into maybe learning new ways of being also. So like the ripple effect is so much more profound than we think. And sometimes you might think it's micro, but it really does ripple out like to anyone that we're in contact with. Since we're talking about shadow work, I'll reveal this. Like even as I'm a healer, there are also times, right, for myself when I'm like, oh my goodness, like am I even cut out to do this? Like, when my own shadows come out, I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not start this to heal. Like, how can I heal? How can I claim to heal others when I haven't fully healed myself? Which is, of course, another like shadow aspect of me that's trying to keep myself small and make me feel like I'm not worthy of being of service when I'm really doing the best work I can to like look at my own wounds as much as possible.
And I think that's very humble that you say that, because I think it gives people permission to offer their own insights
Yep.
without feeling like they have to be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Every single person has their own deep wisdom. It's just all about accessing it.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm a writer, and someone said to me once, and it never left me. She said, everyone has a story and it's important to them.
Yes. Everyone
And
can literally
that
be an author if they wanted to.
it's so true, right? And that's what it is. It's like, everyone has a story of being wounded in some,
Yeah.
and so that means that everyone gets to do shadow work.
That's a funny way to put it, but yeah, I suppose so. I mean,
It's
it
true,
could be a
right?
privilege because, like, yeah,
No one is omitted from this
yeah,
opportunity. So, as it's someone who works with people and helps them through their own shadow work, can you explain what shadow work really is?
yeah. So, how I would personally define it is shadow work is the process of sitting with and facing and embracing the parts of yourself that you feel shameful about or that make you feel bad about yourself. That's how I would put it in simple terms. Or
Okay.
even processing emotions that are not so quote unquote enjoyable. For example, grief. Like that's also shadow work if one were to sit and just look at their own grief.
Mm. Well, what compelled you to do your own shadow work? And then what usually compels other people to come to you for shadow work? We'll answer what led you to it first.
Yeah, totally. I feel like for me, it was a bit of what I told you about earlier. So just me being really dedicated to show up as the best healer I can for others. And for that, I would have to work a lot on myself first. And actually, for a while, I attended the Barbara Brennan School of Healing remotely in California. I'm not sure if you've heard of that school, but so far, I only did the first year of that diploma. And the first year is all about healing yourself first before you really go out and heal others. So, like, I really took that year really seriously because there was just so much during that year that I found out about myself. And, for example, there could be clients who come to you who maybe they trigger something in you or like they remind yourself of maybe your parent whom you're not in good terms with and you immediately have this like filter of projection onto them, right? And you don't want that. Like as a healer, like I feel it's kind of my responsibility to take everyone from a neutral stance, from a neutral and compassionate stance. So yeah, that's just a little example. Or another example could be like a client might approach you and they could be having their own defense mechanism play out. So let's say, and then maybe they're putting that onto you. So in those kinds of instances, it could be so easy for a healer to be reactive and be defensive back. But really, our responsibility, as I said, is to just be neutral, which, it's not the easiest. And I think the times when we're not able to always be 100% neutral, like it's so important for me to still offer compassion to myself because I was still doing the best that I could in that kind of situation.
What usually brings people to you that they are like, okay, I think I need to do some shadow work and I don't know where to start?
Yeah, in my experience, it's normally when people are really tired of something or tired of a pattern playing out that maybe they've like experienced again and again in their lives. Sometimes if they're going through grief of a lost one as well, like that can linger for so many years, and that's also another common reason that they're drawn to me a lot of times. And probably also because I do mediumship work.
With shadow work, so let me tell you my understanding of it, and you
Yeah,
tell me, fill in my gaps
of
because you're
course.
not an expert by any stretch. So for me, with my shadow work, and you said the word that I was hoping that would get shared today, are triggers, right? And so when someone triggers something inside of us, whether it's shame or anger or defensiveness, and any of the labels that we consider negative, right? Those are our tells, and that shows us where our shadow is. That doesn't always point the direction to where the wound is, does it? Or is that just like the doorway to the wound?
I feel like shame is one of the most powerful indicators, or one of the most obvious doorways, I would say, or at least in
Okay.
my experience. And it does kind of point into that direction, if not specifically at the core wound itself, because for some, the core wound might be really deep and hidden under many layers. But I would say the shame would still point to that. So maybe you could share an example with me if you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
of a
So,
time when you didn't feel like the shame was pointing to a wound. I'm
oh, that's a
curious.
great question. Well, I agree with you. I think the shame's always pointing to a wound. I can't think of an example where it wouldn't be.
Right.
Well, pulling from some of the archetypes of in shadow work, we have the hero
Mm-hmm.
type, right? Where it's someone who, is always wants to ride in and save the day. And they
Right.
tend to be critical of the people who are actually doing the work, but really not investing a lot of time.
Okay.
Right. So that heroic, that would be in the Carl Jung aspect, understanding the hero archetype. And so that wound would probably come from probably an overbearing parent, a highly critical
Right.
parent, right? So is that kind of how you work with your client, is to kind of see what kind of archetype they're falling into and then figure out where the wound originated? Is that typically how you work?
That's such a good question because I actually never dove really deep or intellectually into the Jungian. It's Jungian psychology, right? Like
Yeah.
what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Jungian. Yeah, I've never really like put that out to my clients during my work. But you know what? That's pretty inspiring because would love to learn more about it now, actually. Like it might make my work easier, I imagine, to be able to not really label things, but to just kind of be more crystal clear aware of like what kind of archetype they're coming from, what kind of wound or childhood wound they're coming from. Yeah, I feel like personally, for my work, I've been keeping it more simple, or more so like asking someone like, all right, like what's the feeling under this feeling? And if they say nothing, like I'm sure there's something, but it's up to you if you feel comfortable right now feeling more into this, because if you're not comfortable, I don't want to force you, but like a lot of times it can be quite somatic, I would say. Like there's two ways I normally go about it. One is more like cerebral and energetic, the other one is more somatic, even though I haven't really formally labeled it as somatic, but people say it feels somatic. And that's when I ask them to kind of, like take a moment to ask yourself, what is the feeling under this feeling? And once you've identified that, like if you close your eyes and be in stillness, like where do you feel this in your body right now? Like put a hand just automatically, intuitively on the part where you feel this feeling.
Oh,
Like, does this feel tight? And are you able to breathe into that, or like to feel a bit more softness here? Like what wants to move? Because does it feel tight? Like, does energy here want to move? And sometimes people have different reactions. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they, yeah, like that's kind of how I normally go about it. And when people cry, I always like to tell everyone that crying to me is so productive. Obviously, not crying from like a spiraling thing, but from crying as a form of processing.
mm.
And to me, whenever I myself cry, I just kind of congratulate myself because I know that shifts are happening inside me, like things that have been stuck for so long are finally moving. So that's a tangible, like, clear, evident way to know that healing is happening. But
Mm.
yeah, I just thought I would
Oh, I
throw that
love
in
that
about
because
crying. Yeah.
crying, it's a release, right? So
Yeah.
it's releasing that energy. It's no longer trapped in our body. And, I say this all the time, we feel like we are just floating heads, right? Like that we forget we have this entire literal ecosystem
Yes.
that we move through the world in,
Yep.
really. And, I think, and why would energies and traumas not get stuck in there if we don't
Yeah.
process them and release them? So, as an example, when I, am feeling overwhelmed, I go for a walk. That's moving the energy through the
Yeah.
body so that then my mind can be clear
Yes.
to make the next decision that I need to make. And if I sat down and I just brooded and I just overthink it and I get angry and, let all these emotions come up without giving them a way to move, I'm
Yeah.
to feel like a lead weight.
Yep.
I won't be able to function well. Yeah.
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 Yeah, the mind can be so so powerful sometimes if we give it that much power, and it can really overtake us. And I saw this quote somewhere once about like the more you're in your body, the higher your frequency is, the more you're in your body and out of your head. And I really like that quote. I always think, I try to remember that sometimes when I catch myself overthinking too. Um, yeah, it's not even about raising your frequency or whatever, but it's really just like being in the present moment. Like even when you're going through like a really hard situation or feeling, like can feel so relieving and releasing to just get everything in your body, like out of this head into the body. Yeah.
Yes. I know, for so long we thought we were thinking beings that had feelings, but now we know we're feeling beings that sometimes think,
Yeah. And
right?
it also doesn't help that I guess in society still like maybe tears and crying is like stigmatized still sometimes.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's nice that people are holding more space for harder feelings now, though, I suppose.
I think so too. I think, and that's where kind of the practical aspects of practical mystics come in, right? Because
Yeah.
we have like, we can't see energy.
Yeah.
We feel energy,
Hmm.
we experience energy, but we can't really see it. Well, unless you
Right.
auras.
Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast episode. Okay.
Clairvoyance.
Stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe. Okay. So, but we do, right? But we do feel energies with people. And it's interesting. And I'm going to share this. I recently had someone who communicated that they didn't like my energy and that they could feel my hum and they didn't like it. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, let me kind of process through this. That's never been said to me before.
All
Okay.
right. All right.
And so I was like, okay, let me kind of reflect on this. And I reached out to other people that I trust in my life. I was like, tell me, be honest. Like, and they're like, oh my God, no. Like, but I realized that we were so out of alignment. But the
Hmm.
beautiful thing of that was this person could feel energy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing that you could find something positive out of this. Like,
But
even
seriously, I was like, that's, and I had to think, I was like, okay, let me reflect on my behavior. Let me reflect on the time we spent together. And I was like, no, I'm comfortable in my energy. I
oh,
like,
beautiful.
yeah, I mean, and if I had more people coming to me, then I would say, okay. And the beautiful thing about that was I've done my shadow work around it. So
Right.
it didn't trigger me. The other things about the encounter did, but that did not,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was like, it's my energy. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with it. And if I think it needs to change, I will change it. But that's because I've done my own shadow work around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so amazing that you're able to see results like that by not behaving in a reactive way. Yeah, and you weren't defensive. And yeah, that's so interesting because I actually have a similar story that happened like just quite recently, honestly. A prospective client had a call with me and they were actually really suspicious of me and my work. And I've never had that before. And it did trigger a little, like some small things in me, but I was still trying to like catch myself in those trigger moments and being like, okay, like this is low-key a test for me to see like how much do I believe in myself, like, you know, I believe in who I am. But yeah, it was really interesting. So I'm really grateful for that learning experience. Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that, because I think we're going to see more of this, where we're going to see more divides with people when it comes to kind of the more ethereal, metaphysical aspects of things. It's becoming, especially on the West Coast,
Yeah.
you know, either coast really, people are talking about the languaging of energy and mediumship and, you know, psychic
Right.
abilities, that it's part of the vernacular, it's part of the conversation.
Hmm.
You know, I know people that, like, you know, they all of a sudden love crystals, like they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know why. You know, and I think we're going to see more of this, because in my opinion, and, you know, just, you know, my limited knowledge of all of this, I truly believe that, just like in our evolution, there were people that could not imagine that the mass population would be able to read, would
Yeah.
be literate. They couldn't even imagine that that was a possibility, that everyone would have a mental capacity to do it.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing, is these gifts are opening up, and gifts that many have had their entire lives, but they're able to, you know, step forward with them now. And
Right.
with all the clairs, clairvoyance, you know, clairsentience, you know, claircognizance, and they're able to say, these are my gifts. And I think everyone has them.
Yeah. Everyone's a psychic. Everyone's secretly psychic. I just gotta tap
Yeah.
into it.
Okay. So I'm not the only one with that belief system then.
Oh, I 100% believe that.
Okay. Well, and, you know, talking about the clairs, you mentioned that you are a medium. Are you comfortable speaking about mediumship?
Yeah, sure. I haven't got the chance to do a lot of formal work with it yet. Like in terms of sessions that focus just on mediumship, but it's just like sometimes in my spirit guide channeling sessions, it's like I'm talking to their spirit guides, but sometimes there will also be like one or two entities or spirits that clearly are not there to serve the highest good of the person, or they're impacting the health of that person or their energy field in some way. So yeah, some of my work involves just like peacefully casting them away so that they you know, comfortably go away on their own, and stop bothering this poor person. Yeah, that's been my experience so far. And um, the spirit guide channeling also involves talking to one's ancestors or past on loved ones sometimes, because one spirit team can consist of so many things. It could be their guides, ancestors. If some people believe in angels, that's a thing too. And if they have like pets that have passed on, spirit animals can be a thing too.
That's a new gift that's opening up to you.
Um, is it new? I feel like I've had experiences of it in the past 5 years, but probably, yeah, kind of refined it more in the past 2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's a service that you offer to your clients.
Spirit guide channeling, yes.
Okay.
But mediumship specifically, no, but it's like kind of thrown in as part of the spirit guide channeling if it's needed in the moment. And if I notice that there are other spirits that need to be kind of released. Yeah.
People who are not, you know, used to this vernacular, or they're not familiar with spirit guides, can you explain to them exactly what you mean when you say a spirit guide?
Yeah, totally. So, like I said earlier, most often they're a team of like non-physical entities around you. And most of the time they know the individual before they've even incarnated in this body. So they know the soul before it was born here. And then, or they could have just joined the team like at some point during their waking life. Um, and I like to say that they're always around just rooting for our highest good always, and for like the life path that serves our highest good. And why I like communicating with them, at least for me, is, you know, I value the advice and opinions of my close ones for sure. And like my mentors, my elders, I value all that so much. But why I turn to my spirit guides a lot is because like all their answers are always out of unconditional love, and they kind of see from such a high perspective as well. Like they know where you're going, they know what you've been through, they know how you were before you were born. So it's like they've got all this like wisdom, and it's just such rich wisdom that I always want to tap into. And because they're not in a human body, they don't have an ego. So like none of their advice or words are from like fear at all. Whereas like as much as I love my mentors and elders, like everyone in a physical body would have some sort of ego filter, right? Or like some sort of thing that they might subconsciously project from, like from their own experiences. So yeah, yeah. I value
Thank
both, I would say. Yeah.
value, but thank you for sharing that. That was a beautiful explanation because I don't think it has to be, once again, we're talking about the ethereal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things. And some people have the gift to see or to feel, right? Into spirit guides and, guardian angels and,
Yeah.
ancestors, they can actually connect with them. But the majority of people who aren't aware of that gift yet, they may not even know that they have a team playing for them.
Yeah.
And I really find that I've I feel protected
Mm-hmm.
with my spirit guides. And
Mm-hmm.
I also know that if someone's being removed from my life, I'm being protected
Yeah.
by them for the as that. Like, so I trust in that, the things that maybe I can't kind of, collate and hang a hat on,
Yeah.
they're there, and so that's my belief system as well, the more mystical aspects of life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too because I feel like I have come across some more atheist friends, or like non-religious friends who they have mentioned a few times. They're like, "Oh, like I feel somehow that I'm always protected in my whole life." Like they still utter things like this, and yeah, probably that's them feeling their spirit guides. Who knows? But maybe unknowingly. Yeah,
Atheists get to participate in magic as well.
of course.
They're not omitted, right? They're not omitted from that. They get to be a part of the magic, which is
100%.
yeah, which is so beautiful. And it's interesting because you do find people. I find some of the most almost analytical people
Hmm.
are they don't discount the possibilities because that would be illogical.
Oh, interesting. Since from a scientific viewpoint.
Right, like I can't prove or disprove, so it would be illogical for me to say it doesn't exist,
Right,
which is a
right.
very practical way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my thinking as well. I'm like, I can't prove or disprove it, so I'm going to go on the side of magic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that you're a mystic and yet you still like think like this. I love it.
So you mentioned that you're from Malaysia. Now, I've never been to Malaysia, but I'm a traveler, so I would love to go one day. Is the more mystical aspects of life, is that part of the culture?
Um, that's so interesting because well, I did grow up in a fairly Buddhist family. Um, and I wouldn't say I'm super religious right now, even though I mean I love and I respect all religions. I feel like they all have something to teach me, to be honest. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if any of my work right now is to do with like my culture. I know my mom got into new age spirituality before me actually, and that was a little influence. And then when I moved here, I kind of found my own path of resonating with it. Um, and by new age spirituality, I also mean old age spirituality because that's really where all these practices come from, right? They're just so ancient. They're just being like reborn right now into our human minds again. Um, yeah, but I mean, I know in Malaysia there's like many different religions coexisting with one another. And I feel like even once I moved away from there, I feel like it's changed a lot. Like there are more people or like people people my age too, like forming little groups and organizations of like, mystics and like being interested in all this like witchy stuff and making it fun. So that's really cool to see. Yeah, little pockets here and there in the community.
I don't think that this is going to lessen. I think it's only going to increase. And I think one of the biggest reasons is generational. Millennials and, Gen Zs, and as we continue
Hmm.
to find, we don't know, the ones that aren't here
Yeah.
yet, the ones that are here, they and I'm going to say you, because I'm assuming you're in the
Hmm.
category. You want depth.
Hmm.
You want a depth of understanding. You want to sit for 4 hours and have a conversation
Yeah.
about, spirit guides. Like, you really want a depth of knowing and understanding, which, the boomers, and I'm Gen X, we had different intentions, and every
Right.
person does. And so I think it's only we're going to see more of it, where people are looking for clarity through the unseen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or at least that's the kind of people that I seem to attract.
me too.
Or like,
What was once considered dark art is now considered something different today, right?
yeah.
Like, there are people who still today have concerns about, tarot and energy,
Yeah.
and which is their under if that's their thing, if they have an issue, they shouldn't be participating in it,
Yeah.
because, they're not coming with an open heart or mind.
Right.
But that said, doesn't mean that they're not impacted by it. Right? They're impacted by energies. They're
Yeah.
impacted by, they need to be doing shadow work like we all do,
Hmm. Hmm.
that type of thing, but they just kind of maybe label it something different.
The vibes, if they might want to call it the
The
vibes.
vibes. Exactly. I don't like your vibe. Okay. You know, and it's true, right? We do hear people say these things all the time. And I think that that's something that, we can't ignore, that we're all picking up on something.
Yeah.
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 Mhm. Now, kind of back to shadow work. So if someone comes to you and they say, as an example, like, I seem to be struggling with my communication. Like, I keep isolating people from my life through my poor communication ability, and I don't know what's happening. I've done all of these other healing modalities, but this is one area I can't seem to get the words out, as an example, in the right way. How would you start shadow work with someone that maybe comes to you with that issue, as an example?
Yeah. I imagine this client in my 3 hour session, which is very in depth, and there's like the spirit guide channeling and energy healing and everything. But if they ask me something like this, like I would ask them like, what's the one thing right now or like lately that you've been wanting to say, or like that you've been wanting to express, and is there someone that you would like to express it to? Doesn't mean you have to express it to that person, but like if you could, in a world where you could, like what would you want to say most right now? So that's kind of a question that I would start with, and then really, if they're feeling any actual physical tightness in their throat energetically, I would invite them to feel into that as well. And well, if it's a 3 hour session, normally that also involves like guided intuitive movement and voice. So I would really focus on the intuitive voice, really just like it's really just an utterance of like a lot of primal sounds for them to open up their throat and their energy fields. It's really like part of the prep for their energy bodies to be open to the channeling that comes after. So yeah, like I would have hopes that the voice would help them a lot because they probably don't utter these kinds of sounds in their daily lives. So stretching the throat. And then like when it comes to the channeling and the healing, I feel like most likely I would be guided to work on their throat chakra a little bit, and maybe while they're in that state, asking them again if there's anything else that they want to express or say right now. And yeah, that's how I would envision it.
So
Yeah.
you would do a lot of somatic work, a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find that people who come to you, um, when you are able to kind of work back to the wound,
Mm-hmm.
seeing, the shadow and the behaviors that are showing in that shadow work when they're triggered, and then you continue to work and then you locate the wound. Do you typically find that it is locked somewhere in the body?
From what I've seen, yes. If because all superficial wounds kind of lead to a core wound, and the most common core wounds that I've been aware of so far are like a wound of like, oh, I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not loved, I'm not lovable. That's kind of, it's so crazy how many triggers, how many different reactive or different triggers all kind of trace back to those same few core wounds because that's such a deep one. But it manifests in different ways for people. So that's what I see. Yeah, did that answer your question? Or I
It
almost
did.
forgot the
And thank you for
question.
sharing that, because it is, when you said, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough. Um, it just, you feel that in the body,
Mm-hmm.
because that so many people walk around feeling that they're not good enough, and that they're not worthy of love, they're not worthy of being seen, and then everything that they do is this hustle
Yeah, yeah,
to kind of outrun that feeling. And the shadow work you would sit with them and you would help them feel through not feeling good enough, right? And then, is that how that works?
yeah. And I would say, like, when people first hear about these core wounds, they're like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Like, I love myself a lot. And I don't blame them for that because, like, these core wounds are so, like, vulnerable and they sound soft. You know what I mean? Like, they sound soft, and it's like, people kind of write that off because they're the layers that they're using to cover that wound kind of expresses itself in so many different ways that are like harder or more hardcore. For example, like you said, hustling or like building up their confidence. But high confidence isn't necessarily equal to high self-esteem and to like really loving yourself deeply. I don't know, it could be like a front that they wear, like a mask or so many things. And they identify with those layers of like, okay, I'm really great because, and I love myself because I just did this great job and I know I'm great and I can do all this stuff and I'm really talented, I'm really skillful. But it's like, if you look deeper, like,
Yeah.
what will you find? Yeah.
And being someone who is in tune and with that can feel into energies, and obviously you're empathic, a lot of people know that word, right? They're empathic, and you connect with mediumship, so you are very in that mystical realm, if you will. Do you find that, so you connect with someone, and sometimes you just kind of know where their pain is, but you have to let them guide them through to it? Is that your practice?
Yeah. Yeah. I figured this out on my own, but I also got the same advice from another somatic healer that I used to work with. Just this whole thing of not really telling people what to feel right now and not pointing out to people the wounds, but it really is just guiding them along their own path and validating their experience right now in the moment. Place a hand on wherever you feel in your body that's tight right now, instead of me saying like, "Oh, your throat feels tight. Why don't you place a hand
Exactly.
there?"
Why don't you touch that?
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I mean, we learn best by doing, right? And by finding our own answers. And, anyone who's ever parented or worked with children in any fashion knows that you don't do it for them. You help them learn how to do it. And,
Yeah.
and that way, I truly believe with, doing shadow work. Once you start learning how to connect with these shadow aspects of yourself and learn how to communicate with them, and connect with them on an emotional level, then you can work through any of them that shows up, but you have to learn how, right?
Yeah.
To be able to go, oh, wow, that just triggered me.
Yep.
And instead of defensively coming back at the person, you take a step back and you're like, why am I feeling like I'm being taken advantage of?
Yep.
Right? What is this triggering in me?
Yep.
A lot of times it's all in your head.
Yeah, and the urge to blame will be so strong.
That person was just had no intention of doing anything,
Mhm.
why do I feel like I'm being judged? It's like, well, if you feel like you're being judged, the right, the healthiest thing, I'd say the healthiest, I won't say right, healthiest thing would be go to the person and say, I feel like I'm being judged. I don't know if that's true. Can we talk about it? Right. Right. But we
Right.
don't do that. Right.
Yeah.
We come at that, we start putting all of our shadow on them.
I
Okay.
also feel sometimes like even if like let's say the person isn't someone that you're comfortable to say this kind of thing to, like if they're not close to you or something, like I personally I would also just um like ask myself like okay, like if they were judging me, like what does that say about me? Or what do I make that to say about myself? Like what do I allow that to say about myself? Like yeah, I think maybe a fuller question to ask would be like if they judge me then so what like like and of course it's probably easier said than done to a lot of people, but in that situation like giving people the space to possibly dislike you I found can be pretty liberating sometimes.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think so often accepting all of those aspects of yourself, even ones that you don't like a lot, but befriending them, becoming gentle with them and understanding that right there opens up a whole new world. You know,
Hmm.
I always recognize that, if someone says, well, you're this, I take a step back and say, sure, I have been, or I could be.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
possibility. Like,
Hmm.
if you're judgmental, yeah, I have judged people in the past. I'm not judging you right now, but I have been. I can
Yeah,
be, right? Like it's accepting all these aspects of being human and not wanting
totally.
to push them away, because that's where the wounding happens.
Yeah.
We try to resist what it means to just be human. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I also like I thought back to what you said earlier about like guiding people towards their own wound instead of pointing it out for them. Like to me it's also kind of about empowerment or just like literally empowering people to know that they can heal themselves as well. Like you said, like once you do it a few times, you realize you can do it for all kinds of wounds that pop up. And like it's really great when like a client is able to do that for themselves, and realize that they have that wisdom inside them to help themselves also. Yeah. Just wanted to add that because it came to my
No, I love
head.
that. And it's also the idea that, they're shadows, right? They're hidden behind doors and right, like right, we don't always see them because we
Yeah.
like blinders, right? They're
Yeah.
in our shadow. And so recognizing that if you are on a personal growth journey and you're committed to it, that when something comes up, it's an opportunity to heal,
Yeah.
not an opportunity to shame or to browbeat yourself or to attack yourself or others. It's always an opportunity to heal something. Sometimes
Yeah.
you, sometimes in them, sometimes in both of you. And it's just a shift in perspective.
Also want to put out an encouragement that it also takes time, like to be patient with yourself. Like that's so key, I feel. Because like, if you don't mind me sharing, like even just recently, like I had a big shadow come up for me, which I wasn't aware of my entire life. And it was the shadow of like, feeling I have to overwork myself in order to like feel worthy of a good and comfortable life. And like, yeah, right. Yeah. And I found that actually, like, I was almost like I was being my ego self was being so stubborn. Like I knew what I had to do because I've been doing this shadow work so much. I already knew like the next step was to go deeper into that softer core pain, like, the one that's more vulnerable and softer, go deeper into that and meet it. But for some reason, my ego self was being so stubborn, like just clinging on to this, like, work approach that I had so strongly identified with my whole life. And I was like, I almost felt addicted to it. It's like, oh no, I don't want to let this go and I realized that why my ego was clinging on to it was because I knew that if I accepted that I had been having this like identity that didn't serve me for so long, I would be like feeling harder on myself. Like I would be like kind of judging myself, be like, oh my God, like seriously, like you're a healer and like like you've allowed yourself to overwork for this long, for your whole life, even though it clearly isn't serving you. So yeah, I would be really hard on myself. Like, so yeah, it just took a lot of time. It took a few days to finally be like, all right, I'm gonna slowly let myself into that little softer core wound and really just take time to intentionally forgive myself and let myself know that it wasn't my fault. And like, yeah, it was a whole process.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That was, and I think
Hmm.
a lot of people are going to resonate with that, especially
Hmm.
in our capitalist culture, right? Like that
Yeah.
feeling of we have to work harder and try harder, and and if we take a day off, we're being lazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful because I know for me, I have a very similar attachment to work. Like I love to work and I love to uh, be of service to others
Hmm.
and to help them grow their dreams. And I went through something very similar recently where I'm like, I don't need to do this the rest of my life. I this is My life is not about work. It's the tapestry of my life. It's part of
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
it's the entirety of the tapestry,
Yeah.
relationships and joy, fun, excitement, happiness. All of that is part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, like even when you're not working, just like how you exist in other areas of your life is also pretty much serving, like
Yeah.
service, like your frequency and your beingness is service.
Well, and our shadows will tell us, no, 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 you need to double down.
Yeah.
Right, like you said, the shadow, the ego will say, no, you need to try harder. You're just not reaching enough people, and you're not you need to come from this side, not this side.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, I'm going to stop for a minute.
Yeah, that feels like resistance to me. Like when you describe that, it feels like resistance.
It does, yeah. And I say this all the time. It's one of my mantras. I may get it tattooed on my body at some point. Resistance has meaning.
Okay, I love it. Oh,
Anytime
powerful
you're
reminder.
feeling resistance, stop.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like how shame is the doorway to our wounds. I guess like resistance is the doorway to, I don't know, what would you call it? Doorway to,
To our shadow, I think.
I guess so. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's right there. The resistance is like, oh, there's a shadow aspect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
Just be patient with yourself or like compassionate with yourself. Like no matter how bad you're feeling, like, you know, things don't, or you don't have to make things worse for yourself by being hard on you. I would say that. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're ever feeling avoidance, feel free to look at that even though it's uncomfortable. Because when I was describing my earlier wound, like what I was feeling at that time was a lot of avoidance, a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But I feel like once the shadow is looked at, what's on the other side of that door is so rewarding because it's like a whole new level of like wholeness in you and like security almost and self-trust. It's like you just feel like your foundation is so much stronger because you've literally integrated the parts of yourself that you were once rejecting, and those it's kind of like remembering the parts of you that you thought were separate, and just like realizing that these parts are also, they deserve so much of your love and they deserve to be you, and you're just, everything's just whole, and you, yeah,
Mm.
nothing needs to be shamed.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it really does, um, it ties into like internal family systems, which is a therapeutic and coaching modality.
Could you
And
say that
so
again?
internal family systems.
Okay, yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, which is, and that's, I mean, what you're describing there is it's that integration
I
of those
see.
parts inside of us. And in internal family systems, the shadows are protectors and
Okay.
what are called firefighters. And they're protecting a part of us that was traumatized.
Right, right,
And so,
right.
and that's where that wound that we're talking about, where the shadow was created, right? Underneath that shadow is the actual wound.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I love how across so many different platforms, we're all saying the same things. We're just
Mm-hmm.
looking at it a little differently, right?
Yep.
Sometimes, people need energy work. Sometimes they need internal family systems work, right? Like
Yeah,
you use
yeah.
all of these modalities. Yeah.
Yeah. Different words resonate so differently with everyone as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. This was such a pleasure. I would love to have you come back anytime on Practical Mystics. We could talk about, anything, of course, mystical and practical steps. And with practical steps, what would be one practical step that you would say to someone who's like, maybe I need to do shadow work? How do I know? What is one practical step that you could give them other than contact you?
I would say the next time that they ever feel shame or even the least bit bad about themselves, that's not something that you deserve, even though you feel like a situation may have happened to justify that you can feel bad about yourself. Like, really, there's like, you don't deserve that, like, no matter the situation. And if you feel triggered, like, take a pause and a deep breath and like tell yourself, like, slowly and repeatedly that you're still lovable. That's kind of what I do also sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I like that
Mm-hmm.
because I think, once again, we're so reactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone does something and we push back and
Mm-hmm.
we judge people by their behaviors, yet we judge
Yeah.
self by our intention, right? And that pause gives you time to consider, are they right?
Yeah. The
Right?
pause is literally where a lot of transformation happens, I feel. Like it's that void where you're able to like choose to make a different choice than how you like reacted in the past to similar situations.
Yeah.
And just the affirmation, like, I am still lovable, like, I am still lovable, like, that says a lot. Cause, like, someone could say a really mean thing to you, and that's when you're triggered. But if you like, if you truly believe that I'm still lovable no matter what, like, you are the only one who can dictate how to feel or how to feel about yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the idea of the practical aspect of looking at a trigger, not to fix it at in the moment,
Yep.
not for any other reason, but out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And to just let it exist in the body and breathe into it. It sounds so like funnily simple, but it works.
It
It just
does.
like it dissipates almost, like, yeah,
Yeah.
dissolves.
It moves through you. It really does.
Yes, that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the curiosity, that's where your shadow work begins.
Yeah.
Is when you actually get curious, not blaming yourself for having the trigger,
Hmm.
not being angry at yourself for, beating yourself up about having the trigger, but getting curious. Why does it bother me, as an example, when, someone tells me how to do something?
Yeah. Right.
It's small, right? Like, why
Yeah.
do I
Yeah.
push back on it? What is, why is that bothering me in that so bigger than life way, right? That's where you get to start your shadow work. You're like, now the work begins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a twofold benefit as well, because like besides like the increased confidence that I spoke about earlier, like not sorry, not confidence, but like self-security and self-love and self-esteem. I feel like it also like naturally helps you be more compassionate towards other people. Like you can I feel like there's a lot of people who do shadow work and after a while, like they see someone like acting really unpleasantly, and they can immediately just like see through that and be like, I know you're coming from your shadow. I'm not gonna entertain this. I'm not gonna react to that. Like it just you're so
Yeah.
much more in power of like your situation and how to respond to it. Yeah.
That is so true. And it's also, it gives you the freedom to go to pause. Once again, that pause,
Hmm.
that valuable pause, and say, Is this my stuff?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this mine?"
Hmm.
Because so often we think if it's happening to us, it's because of us.
Yeah.
And when you take that step back and without reaction and go, like you said, did I deserve this? Well, no, no one deserves to be mistreated. No one deserves to be treated poorly, and, kind of figure out, oh, that's their work.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave them to do it. I'm going to focus on mine
Hmm.
because that's the only power that I have
Yeah.
is in my world, in the healing that I do. And then if we can come back together in a healthy way, that's where we'll start again. Yeah.
Yeah, such a great statement or reminder for empaths. Is this my stuff? I like that. Like empaths should always ask themselves that. And I have a feeling a lot of people listening to this right now are probably empaths too. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I'm
that's
pretty
a nice
sure. Yeah.
reminder.
I don't think anyone who's not would listen this long. That none of it would have been a whole other language. They wouldn't have understood what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The empaths are going to go, yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's not always my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to lay it down. I'm not carrying it. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, this was so good, Leona. I'm so excited. All of Leona's information is in the description. And can you tell people where they can find you on the social media platforms?
Yeah, totally. My Instagram is just my first and last name, Leona Khong. And my website is also just my first and last name, leonakhong.com. So that's really easy. And yeah, I'd love to connect on social media if anyone wants to say hi. Always
Great.
love connecting on the interwebs.
On the interwebs. And what are you offering as far as services right now?
Oh, I'm offering a lot. Like on my website, there's the spirit guide channeling that I talked about earlier, spirit guide channeling plus energy healing. That's kind of 3 hours for one session. And then there are other things too, like shadow work breakthrough. That's kind of more an intro, not so somatic, but more so like cerebral and energetic. Um, what else am I offering? I offer tarot readings. I am. I teach in-person yoga classes, but that's in Vancouver, and for now, that's every Thursday evening only. I teach yin yoga at a local health integrative clinic. Yeah, I feel like that might be it. Like, am I
I
not me
think it's
forgetting my own
plenty.
offerings?
I think that's your shadow saying I should be doing more because that's plenty.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I feel like that's it. That's it for now. Yeah.
And you can find all this information in the description box, and as well as how to find Leona and her services and her social platform. So once again, loved having you on Practical Mystics. Cannot wait to have you back someday. And everyone check her out.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This was amazing. I
Thank
loved
you.
it so much.
I love these conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye bye.